Hello, I've come to see Deoksugung Palace, one of the 5 grand palaces in Seoul. I'm currently at an observatory overlooking the palace. It's located on the 13th floor of the Seoul City Hall Annex, offering a panoramic view of the palace. Anyone can come up here and enjoy the view for free. Deoksugung Palace is my personal favorite among Korea's palaces. You can see the beautiful harmony between the palace and the modern skyscrapers behind it. This palace is located particularly close to the skyscrapers, creating a sense of a juxtaposition of past and present. That's one of the reasons I love it. Now, let's descend from the observatory and take a closer look at the palace. Deoksugung Palace is located just west of Seoul City Hall. It wasn't originally the royal residence. Its full-fledged use as a palace began after the Japanese invasions of 1592. The Japanese burned down all of Joseon's palaces, and after the war, with no royal living quarters left, this royal family mansion, the only remaining intact structure, became a temporary palace. Here, Joseon is the old name of Korea. So originally, this wasn't a palace, but a grand mansion for a royal relative. The entire palace was burned down, but this place survived the war because the Japanese army used it as a military headquarters. During the Japanese invasion, King Seonjo of Joseon fled to the Chinese border to escape the Japanese army, leaving the capital completely under Japanese control. Upon entering the palace, a gate appears. Entering through that gate leads to Hamnyeongjeon, the king's bedroom. Deoksugung Palace served as a temporary palace after the Japanese invasion of Korea. When Jeonggwajeon Palace was built, it was returned to its original owner. However, 280 years later, during the era of rampant imperialist colonial rule, Joseon once again faced a crisis at the hands of Japan. In the 19th century, Japan attempted to conquer Joseon in the same way that other empires had conquered their colonies. They used military force to force open trade and signed unequal treaties to gain economic benefits. I looked inside the Hamnyeongjeon building. There stands the Il-wol Obongdo, a painting of the sun, moon, and 5 mountain peaks. This is a symbolic painting that always appears behind the throne of the Korean king. In 1896, the Joseon royal family, dissatisfied with Japan's unilateral trade gains, joined hands with the Russian Empire to overcome the current situation. They declared a new national name, the Daehan Empire, replacing the previous name Joseon, and designated Deoksugung Palace as the main palace. This decision was made because Deoksugung Palace was located right next to the Russian embassy. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire needed an ice-free port. It needed to establish good relations with Korea and secure a trade route to the Pacific, and this was a mutually beneficial situation. At that time, Korea, like it still is today, was mired in a complex diplomatic vortex. All the countries surrounding the Korean peninsula were major powers, and overcoming them diplomatically was a truly daunting mission. The Korean Empire, though named after the empire, was not realistically feasible. The gap in engineering technology between the West and the East had already widened considerably. The British Empire fiercely contested the expansion of the Russian Empire's influence in the Pacific. When the British Empire learned of Korea's alliance with Russia, it formed an alliance with Japan to contain Russia. Thus, a war broke out between Japan and Russia over control of the Korean peninsula, and Japan emerged victorious. Having triumphed over both China and Russia, Japan gained recognition as the great powers that ruled Korea, and Korea became a Japanese colony. The building you see directly in front is Junghwajeon. It's the central building of the palace. Although it's called the central building, you can see that it was built small, only 1 story high. Originally, like Gyeongbokgung and Cheongdeokgung, it was a 2-story building. Just 2 years after its construction, it was reduced to ashes by fire. The internal condition of the palace was also extremely poor at this time, with 3 fires occurring since the proclamation of the Korean Empire. The nation's power was declining, and financial difficulties forced the central building to be rebuilt on a smaller scale. This illustrates the tragic nature of history. This time, we'll visit the Seokjojeon next to Junghwajeon. To the west of the main building stands a truly unique European-style building. This was the first and last Western-style palace built in Korea. It was built with the goal of embracing Western civilization and fostering good relations with the European powers as the nation teetered on the brink of collapse. However, 3 months before its completion, Korea became a Japanese colony. It's also my personal favorite space. Deoksugung Palace has a truly sad history, but in stark contrast, its diverse architectural styles coexist, creating a unique and splendid atmosphere. This makes the sadness even more palpable. Looking back at its history, Korea faced numerous structural challenges at the time. It relied primarily on China for trade, and the class system created a harsh environment for the lower classes. The low salaries of high-ranking officials fostered corruption, and it's true that trust was lacking throughout society. These complex factors created a situation where it was difficult to prevent foreign invasion. I arrived in front of the Seokjojeon building. To see the interior, you can make a reservation online in advance and enter for free. On weekends, reservations are highly competitive, making it difficult. I wasn't able to enter the building, but instead, I climbed the stairs and looked out over the entire palace. It's said that after the Seokjojeon building was built, King Gojong didn't live there because it was uncomfortable. He only used it to entertain distinguished guests. After Japan colonized Korea, it retained the Korean royal family, not expelling them. Japan prevented the Korean royal family from participating in politics and simply provided them with funds to maintain their dignity. This was a political strategy aimed at quelling the rebellion of Koreans at the time. However, Koreans were highly critical of the Korean royal family. The royal family had struggled to gain independence from Japan, but after becoming a colony, they were granted substantial private property and enjoyed a comfortable life. After Korea regained independence, it banned the royal family members currently residing in Japan from entering the country and nationalized all of their property. The building visible on the left is Seokjojeon. It's unusual that it's the only building without danchong, traditional Korean paintwork. Danchong was only permitted on palace buildings and temples. Before Deoksugung Palace became a royal palace, this building was the private residence of Prince Wolsan, a member of the royal family. As mentioned earlier, after the Japanese invasions of Korea and the subsequent destruction of the palaces, King Senjo, upon returning to the capital, had nowhere to stay. So, as a member of the royal family, he stayed here. It was King Senjo's temporary residence. The harmony between the palace and the modern skyscrapers behind it is truly breathtaking. Of Korea's 5 grand palaces, this one is the closest to the skyscrapers, making it particularly attractive. The building you see in front is Jeonggwanheon. It has one of the most unique architectural styles among the palace buildings. The exterior of the building reveals a blend of Korean and European architectural styles. It's well known as the place where Emperor Gojong drank coffee and tea, but before that, it was also the place where the king's portrait was painted. It currently appears to be an open pavilion, but it was originally enclosed on all sides by brick. Its original purpose is said to have been as a storage facility for royal treasures. This is the interior of the building. Unfortunately, you can't enter the interior at the moment. I was able to sit on that chair when I visited before. It's probably closed for cultural preservation purposes. This time, I walked behind the Seokjojeon building. There's a Western-style building here. It's called Dondeokjeon. It was primarily used as a residence for distinguished guests. The daughter of American President Theodore Roosevelt stayed here. It's said that this building was originally built to commemorate the 40th anniversary of Emperor Gojong's ascension to the throne. He intended to invite all foreign embassies. Perhaps by constructing a Western-style building, Gojong wanted to show that Korea was not a weak nation. However, due to various international political challenges, fires, and epidemics, the ceremony was ultimately cancelled. Later, his son, Sunjong's coronation ceremony was held here. I'm back at Seokjojeon Hall again. This time, I'm planning to walk past Seokjojeon and toward the back of Junghwajeon, the central building of Deoksugung Palace. I returned to the back of the Junghwajeon building. Looking at the front, it looked like high school students were on a field trip. I could see the students sitting on the podium of the building. This time, we have the facade of Seokjojeon. Uniquely, it's a 2-story structure, a unique feature among traditional Korean houses. Traditional Korean buildings typically feature ondol, underfloor heating, floor heating, so most aren't built with 2 stories. As mentioned earlier, this building was originally a private residence, not a palace, and it's believed the 2-story design was intended to ward off the summer heat. The second-floor windows were opened to help ventilate the building and cool it down. I'm heading back outside after touring Deoksugung Palace. The palace used to be much larger than it is now. During the colonial period, when this area was converted into a park, most of the buildings were torn down, leaving only those of historical significance. This time, I'm going to leave Deoksugung Palace and walk along the palace stonewall path to explore the old site. As you exit Deoksugung Palace, you'll see tall buildings. You can also see Seoul City Hall across the street. I turned around again and looked toward the main gate of Deoksugung Palace. I'm going into the alley on the left side of the palace. The alley on the left is always bustling with people. That's because there's a famous Belgian waffle dessert shop there. It's a must visit for tourists visiting the area. You'll always see people lining up. The Deoksugung Stonewall Road is a popular dating spot for couples. The street is especially beautiful in autumn when the leaves are ablaze. During weekday lunchtime, you can see office workers coming out to get some fresh air, and the street becomes incredibly crowded. Ironically, while this is a popular dating spot for couples, there's also a popular saying that couples who walk this path will break up. This is because, in the past, there was a family court nearby, so many divorcees would pass through this path. If you continue walking along the Stonewall Road, you'll reach a roundabout. This is also a historically significant site. Across the street is Jeongdong Church, Korea's first church. At the time, American missionary Agenfeller built this church and the modern educational institution Beije School, and he nurtured Korean independence activists. Famous figures among Koreans, including Seo Jae-pil, Yoon Chi-ho, Ri Sing-min, and Ju Si-kyung, were all educated by Agenfeller. Among them, Ri Sing-min became the first president after Korea became independent. On the right of this alley is Deoksugung Palace. On the left is the former site of the American Embassy. It currently serves as the official residence of the American Embassy. Around Deoksugung Palace are not only the American Embassy, but also the British and Russian embassies. This gives a glimpse into the complex and difficult diplomatic processes of the past. Walking along Deoksugung-gil, you'll eventually reach the top of a hill. This road I'm walking along was originally the northern part of Deoksugung Palace. As I mentioned earlier, during the Japanese colonial period, Deoksugung Palace was turned into a park, and most of the palace buildings in this area were torn down, leaving behind the current appearance. Looking to the right from here, the area up to the tall buildings in the distance was the original area of Deoksugung Palace. Today, all the palace buildings that once stood here have been torn down. The original lawn area housed a building where royal portraits were stored and where ancestors were worshipped and prayed for. The building in front is the residence of a high-ranking official of the Joseon Savings Bank during the Japanese colonial period. Joseon Savings Bank was Korea's first deposit-taking bank, established by Japan to subordinate Korea's economy. At the time, the northern part of Deoksugung Palace was demolished, and this house was built here. Therefore, the building style is Japanese. Deoksugung Palace is currently undergoing restoration work. You can see a wooden building under construction in the distance. There were attempts to restore it in the past, but the structure itself was unknown, making it impossible. However, traces of the original building have recently been discovered, making it possible to restore it to its original form. Construction is expected to be completed in 2039. And the road I'm walking now is connected to the Russian embassy. This is the road King Gojong took to the Russian embassy after the Queen of Joseon was assassinated by a Japanese Ronin. This signified the collapse of national security. After Japan's victory over the Qing dynasty, Joseon, with nowhere else to turn, began to cultivate closer ties with Russia. The assassination of the queen by the Japanese further strengthened relations between Joseon and Russia. Looking straight ahead, you'll see a white building. That building is part of the former Russian embassy. Most of the buildings have now been demolished, leaving only that one standing. The Russian embassy was said to have been located on a high hill overlooking Deoksugung Palace. After the Qing dynasty's defeat by Japan, Joseon's close ties with Russia proved quite a wise choice. Joseon and Russia share a border, and at the time, the Russian Empire was the second most powerful nation in the world, after the British Empire. Joseon's friendship with Russia was a strategic move that made it difficult for Japan to easily attack Joseon. The problem was that the British Empire, then the world's most powerful nation, fiercely opposed Russia's friendship with Joseon, which ultimately led to the alliance between Britain and Japan. Ultimately, Japan won the war against Russia and gained a diplomatic monopoly over Joseon. I'm walking down the hill past the former Russian embassy and along a street lined with high-rise buildings. Continuing down this street, I arrive at Gwanghwamun Square. The area north of Deoksugung Palace and Gwanghwamun Square are very close together. They're just a 5-minute walk away. I'm at the Gwanghwamun Square intersection. The large LED advertising buildings directly in front of you are where Cheonggyecheon Stream is. Turn left and cross the street to reach Gwanghwamun Square. It's always bustling with tourists. Finally, we stand in front of the statue of Admiral Yi Sun-sin. A 10-minute walk behind the statue will take you to Deoksugung Palace, the most famous palace in the country. This concludes my tour of Deoksugung Palace. Thank you for watching the video.